do the Big 12. The Big 12 to me has got a lot of programs that are really right around the same level. I don't think there are any overly outstanding programs in the Big 12 right now. I don't think that there are too many horrible programs in the Big 12 right now. Yeah, I think the Big 12 is kind of just a morass. Any team can win the Big 12 in any given year. I think that's going to continue in this era of the Big 12. Obviously, we saw it. Arizona State won the Big 12 this year, and we're literally preseason last 16th. So I think the Big 12 is going to have a lot of those. The Big 12 is going to really stack up the bell curve here. Anyway, West Virginia is the first one. West Virginia, okay, perfect example. West Virginia is a program that we've seen a pretty decently high peak under Rich Rodriguez's first tenure. There in the mid-2000s. Obviously, he's back now as their head coach. I think that's good for them. I think he'll do pretty well, but I don't think that they'll win at the level that they did. West Virginia is just a middle-of-the-road kind of program. They're a program that's going to win 7 or 8 games sometimes. Maybe they'll get up to a 9. I don't know about a 10. I don't really see West Virginia winning 10 games. I mean, very often at all, but yeah, it's possible they might win 4. They're just in the middle of the road. This is going to be a theme over the next few minutes here. West Virginia is a middle of the road Big 12 team that has a little bit of history, kind of. I think that they're a better, more football focused program than these programs here in High C. I don't think that they have the potential of SMU. I'm going to drop West Virginia right there. And so the next Big 12 team I see here is Houston. Houston, right. So Houston has been a successful program in the American Athletic, getting themselves ranked pretty high a couple of times, having some really successful offenses, and has been a fairly good program, or was a fairly good program in the American Athletic. They've been in the Big 12 now for 2 years. It has gone less well. Holgerson went there, got himself canned, and now they got Willie Fritz, who I think is a good coach. But again, Houston is a program that's having a bit of tough sledding in the Big 12. We've seen this from a number of programs, SMU being the exception, that when they do make that jump from the Group of 5 to the power conferences, they've had some struggles. Houston is no exception, and I am going to dock those programs or rank them maybe a little bit lower than people might expect. Just because I think that we need to see it from them on the Power 5 level. And in the case of SMU, we have seen it. We need the Power Conference. I'm going to say Power 5. You know what I mean. At the Power Conference level. With SMU, we saw it, but it's only been 1 year. If SMU can prove that they can be consistent winners at this level, then I'll move them up. And they can pass over the UNCs and NC States, Virginia Techs, maybe even Louisville. We'll see. We'll see how high they can get. But Houston has not done that, and so I'm going to rank Houston fairly low. I'm going to rank Houston even below these kind of teams. I'm going to rank Houston, I don't know, what do I have notes for? Yeah. Houston, I am going to put below, I'm going to put Houston somewhere around here in the low C. Again, Houston can move up. They're in a city, they are, like some of these other programs in this area, in a big city that doesn't give a shit about their football program. But they have fertile recruiting ground by players that mostly, with players that mostly don't go there, and go to other schools in their state and in their region. So, yeah, Houston, I think they have potential to be okay. I do like their coach. I do think that it's possible that he leaves there to go somewhere else. Maybe he'll stay for a while. I don't know. But I think that with Houston, we really just need to see it at the power conference level before I'm willing to put Houston anywhere outside of the lower tiers. Good luck, though. And here's another program like that in Central Florida that's in the Big 12 now. A really weird fit conference-wise. The Big 12 right now is an absolute monstrosity of a really weird conference with a lot of bad fits. If you compare the Big 12 now to what it was even just a few years ago, I mean, it's totally different, right? I mean, they added TCU and West Virginia, a dozen or so years ago, to make up for the losses that they had to the SEC and elsewhere. After they've got Colorado back now, but I mean they got a whole bunch of teams that it's weird. Anyway, UCF is definitely, I think, the weirdest of them all. I will give UCF a little bit of credit. Their high peak a few years ago was a bit higher than programs like Houston and some of these other ones. Obviously, they went undefeated that one year. They've been inconsistent since then, but I think that their move to the power conference level has been a little bit more successful than Houston's. And I do think they are in a big city, the city of Orlando. I hate that city. I was just spent a lot of time as a Ute in Florida, but I hate Orlando. I think it's a horrible city, but Orlando does care about UCF more than Atlanta cares about Georgia Tech, more than LA cares about UCLA, more than Pittsburgh cares about Pitt, or Houston cares about their college team. So I do think UCF, I know they have a huge student body, a lot of commuters there, but they do have a huge student body. They got a little bit of money. They don't have a lot of cachet. I'm probably going to put them up in mid-C. I'm going to put them like, I don't know, maybe like here. Get it right in there. I want to put UCF somewhere around there. Again, I think that they have potential. They have a chance. They've been really inconsistent as a team on the field. Obviously, they've been in the Big 12 2 years now. Had some decent wins and also had some awful losses. And so, I don't know. We need to figure out what UCF's going to be going forward. They got Scott Frost back after Gus Malzahn went out to pasture, and now he's the OC at Florida State. We'll see how that goes. But I think bringing Scott Frost back might work. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. Obviously, he had success there before. You know, UCF's got some advantages, but they've got some disadvantages. I'm not going to talk about them forever. We're going to put them in mid-C, in the middle of mid-C. I think they're an average to slightly below average program when compared to the rest of the Power Five. I think they're a team that, you know, should probably be going to bowl games, but if they miss, it won't shock me. I don't think did they make a bowl game this year? I don't think they did. Anyway, next Big 12 team, Utah. Okay, so Utah has been very consistently good for quite a long time, going back to the Urban Meyer years. Obviously, now we're going back 20 years when they were really shaking things up, winning BCS bowl games and stuff like that. Went undefeated in 04, I think, or something like that. Yeah, Alex Smith. Anyway, but they've been, you know, Kyle Whittingham's been there a long time. He's been extremely successful. They're hard-nosed teams. They punch above their weight. They're better than their recruiting rankings. They're a good developmental program. They put guys in the league. Good program. Obviously, they won the Pac-12 title back-to-back years, if I'm remembering that correctly. I think 21 and 22. They were the favorite in the Big 12 coming in, but had a lot of injuries and had a really rough year. I think they only won 5 games this year, which was really a surprise. They were one of the more disappointing teams in the country this year. But because they've been consistent winners, they do have good fan support. I think they've got pretty good NIL money, at least I think so. I think they're well positioned to win in the Big 12. I am going to treat this year as kind of a blip on the radar. And I do expect Utah to be a team that's going to make a push next year, perhaps to be a Big 12 champion or playoff kind of team. And they've been more consistent, certainly, than these programs, more consistent, and I think higher peak than these programs here in mid-B. I think I'm going to put Utah as a team that I'm going to put somewhere up in high B. I'm going to say I think Utah is a top 20, top 25 kind of program. They've been more consistent than these teams here in USC and Florida State and Miami. Not as high of high peaks, but again, these 3 programs here, their trophies are dusty. I'm not going to put them as high as Washington. I'm going to put Utah somewhere around right there. Maybe that's a little bit high, especially given the fact that they had a really tough year this year. But I think Utah is a really good, strong, solid program that can win moving forward. And so, you know, and they have won recently. I mean, you know, they've been good. They never made the 14 playoff, but I mean, there are several years in the last several years where they would have made a 12-team playoff where they've won their conference and they've been good and solid. I think they're a solid program on solid footing, despite a bit of a blip this year. Texas Tech, another, okay, we're going to have I'm looking at this right now. There's a bunch of these Big 12 teams that I'm going to have similar rankings. And a lot of them are going to be like C tier. Maybe B, high C, low B, high C, mid C kind of situation. Texas Tech's one of them. Texas Tech, I just, what do I have notes on Texas Tech? Obviously, Texas Tech was a program that did have some good years in the 2000s, in the aughts, as it were. I don't know. What do I have? Yeah, that makes about sense. Anyway, but they haven't been very good or consistently good recently. Even when they had Patrick Mahomes, they weren't consistent winners. Um, and so they're just a program they're not gonna recruit great, but they're gonna get a few players, but they're gonna be in that sort of transfer mess. Don't have a ton to say about Texas Tech. People in Texas, I did live in Texas for a very brief time as a teenager. And you meet people who are Texas Tech grads, and they are fans of Texas, so they support their team. But it's just not a super relevant program nationally. I think it's a better football program. Probably, I probably put them like maybe here. You know, they're a program that okay, they make some bowl games most of the time, but if they made the playoff, that'd be a shocker. Like they're just not. I'm not going to get fired up about Texas Tech football. So, I get as fired up about Texas Tech football as I might about Michigan State or Illinois football or whatever. So, Texas Tech is what they are, and we're going to see a lot of these Big 12 teams like that. TCU actually is not one of those teams. TCU is a program that I do have a lot of respect for. TCU jumped up to the power conference level. It's been a dozen years now, and they've had a lot of success. I think the 2014 they were really, really good. Probably should have made the playoff. Did make the playoff in 2022, beat Michigan, got to the national championship. I think the way that game went, very poorly for them when they lost to Georgia, does put a little bit of a stain on that season. But, they still deserve to be in the playoff, obviously. They won a playoff game. And they're a good program. They're well coached. They have had a couple of down years the last 2 years. The last 2 years weren't amazing for them, but they do have cachet. And I think that they have resources in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They do okay. And I think that they can right the ship. I don't know when the next time they'll make it back to the playoff is, but it's not impossible. I mean, they've had high levels of success in recent years, and for that reason, I think we've got to put TCU. What did I make notes? Yeah, you're right. I think we put TCU above this morass of this C tier. I think TCU is definitely a B tier. The question is, are they? I don't think they're high B. I think that are they? Where are they here? I think I'm going to put them. They've just had more. They're better and more consistent, and have had higher peak and more success than these ACC teams here. I'm going to put TCU like right there. I'm going to put them in mid B. I think I like TCU about the same as I like the rest of those teams you see there in mid B. So I'm going to drop TCU in there. Solid program, pretty consistent winners. I think they have a good program culture. They're fairly well heeled, I think. So what we're going to do with TCU. Next, we've got Oklahoma State. Okay, so Oklahoma State was horrible this year. They were supposed to be good. A lot of people liked them to go to the Big 12 title game. They were absolutely horrendous. 3 wins, and I think they needed a really lucky overtime win over Arkansas at home to even get to 3, it turned out. Their team totally quit by the end of the year. I mean, capital Q quit, as they say on the Cover 3 podcast. Shouts to them. But and so they were horrible. And Mike Gundy has had his contract restructured because they were so bad. But they have money, obviously. Famously, T. Boone Pickens, who I think is dead now, but bequeathed them with a largesse, as it were. Anyway, not a program that's had great highs, not a program that's got a ton of tradition, but they got enough. They are in Oklahoma is a very football crazy state as well. What do I think about Oklahoma State? I think the question is, do I put Oklahoma State in with the West Virginias and the Texas Techs? They definitely aren't. They're definitely better program than these programs now, and I think they're a better program than these two. I think I put them around. I think Oklahoma State to me is sort of the Big 12 version of North Carolina or Virginia Tech, or I think we put Oklahoma State somewhere around right there. I think that they pretty consistently okay. They were horrible this year, but Oklahoma State's not horrible often. They're not great often, and they're not like some historically winning huge but I think they have some reason. I put them in there with that bunch of ACC schools. I think it's a fair place to put the Pokes. Next Big 12 team is Kansas. Now, Kansas had a down year this year. They were supposed to be good, and they ended up not being great, but they did get some good wins. I like their quarterback. I really like their coach, Lance Leipold. Was very successful before he got to Kansas and has been good. Kansas is another one of those programs that would have been an absolute flat F not that long ago, right? I don't know if I have any Fs right now. I guess I don't think that there are any programs that are absolutely like burning tire around the neck, like awful. Kansas was that, and they've gotten out of it thanks to a smart coaching hire. Are they D? Probably not. I probably am going to put them in C somewhere. I think, yeah, that's the note I had. Yeah, I probably put them in C somewhere. Their people aren't huge football fans. Our basketball school, obviously. I think they got a little bit more care and a little bit more resources than perhaps a Wake or a UVA or a Rutgers. Do I put them ahead of Houston? Maybe I'm going to drop Kansas in there somewhere. They have some potential, but it's just hard to milk wins out of that stone of a football program. But I think their coach right now, insofar as he stays there, is going to have some success at Kansas. And so I think that they can be decent in the new look Big 12. I think that they can, trying to make bowl games is a reasonable expectation for them. But again, it's hard, not an easy job. I think if he leaves for another job, they might go right back down to F. I don't know, but we'll see. That's where I'm putting Kansas. Kansas State, more consistent winner. When I say Kansas State, what programs does Kansas State remind you of? What tier do you think that Kansas State should be in, right? If you think back on Kansas State over the years, I like their coach as well. Kleiman, I think, is a good coach. They're another program that punches above their weight, not quite to the extent that Utah has been doing. Kansas State, to me, it's pretty clear what tier they belong in. I think they're a better program than these. I think that they're not the program with the cachet or the consistent. Well, consistency is a bad word to use for these three. But they don't have the cachet of these programs or the consistency of these. But they do have the consistency of these programs. I think that Kansas State pretty clearly belongs here in this tier. And that's the note that I have on them, yeah. Don't know if they... I'm going to drop them like... Let's put them here. I like Kansas State as a team that can consistently be good, that is rarely bad, that is tough, that recruits not a super high level but doesn't need to, which reminds me of all of these programs that we're looking at here in mid-B tier. Programs that Louisville to me is a little bit more dangerous offensively, whereas the other ones are a bit more like, run it down your throat kind of teams, more or less. Not always. I mean, it changes, right? But consistently pretty good. And can do some damage, and I think are well coached and good developmental programs. I like Kansas State. I'm going to put them in mid-B. I think they're an above average, fairly consistent program that has had some pretty decent highs, even if they lack the huge championships. We've seen them win the Big 12. We've seen them do some good stuff. Next is Iowa State. Iowa State, good season this year, 10 wins. Really good coach in Matt Campbell, who... looks like he's staying there. I thought he would have left Iowa State years ago. Iowa State had a couple really good seasons and then a couple of down ones where they were supposed to be good. Iowa State's a program that's usually pretty good when they're supposed to be bad and sometimes bad when they're supposed to be good. They're not supposed to be good that often. Their history is awful if you look at Iowa State going back through the decades. It's a really hard place to win. And I think it's harder than Kansas State. I think Kansas State is clearly a more consistently good program than is Iowa State. I think Kansas State's pretty clearly a B. I think Iowa State's pretty clearly a C. But I think that they have had some pretty good success. I think that their coaching staff is good. Matt Campbell's a really good coach. He could easily upgrade to a place that's easier to win than Iowa State. Iowa State did have a really good season this year, and I'm going to give them a bump for that. And I'm going to I think that they're a similar program in my eyes to, normally I might say they're similar to a Minnesota. But I'm going to give them a bump, and I'm going to put them like right here, right now. I think that they have Matt Campbell, and some of the success he's had there elevates them a little bit, but I don't think they get into the B tier. I don't even think that they're as consistent as a program like a North Carolina or an Oklahoma State. So I'm going to put them into the upper portion of C tier. Next Big 12 team I see here is Cincinnati. Another team that was really, really good during the end of their tenure in the American Athletic. Obviously, they made the playoff and had a great year. Did lose the playoff game. I mean, come on. But again, they've struggled since joining the Big 12. Obviously, their coach, Fickle, went to Wisconsin. They replaced him with Satterfield, which is when you're hiring a coach as a soft landing from Louisville. Like, I know I've been pretty positive about Louisville, but Yeah, it's just not what you want. Cincinnati should see themselves as a program that's on par with Louisville. That should be what they want to be. They're both sort of those city universities in the same area. They're close to each other, a bit basketball forward, the old Metro Conference kind of. But Cincinnati, there's no reason why Louisville football should be this much better than Cincinnati. Louisville obviously got a head start by joining the ranks of the power conferences before Cincinnati did. I think it's been a bit of a rough run for Cincinnati, and I think that Cincinnati's going to need to show me a bit more at the power conference level before I'm comfortable putting them up in this area. I think I'm going to drop them even down to low C. I want to see Cincinnati be a team that can consistently make bowl games, recruit better than they have. The last 2 years have not been amazing for them. So hopefully they get on track. Obviously, my pro team in football is Cincinnati. So not that doesn't make me a UC fan. I'm not, but whatever. I like Cincinnati sports generally. So I hope that they can improve and get back to their winning ways that they had before they joined the conference. We'll see how it goes, but I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt just yet. Next team is Colorado. Okay, so yeah, Colorado's got a lot of momentum. Obviously, the whole Dion thing. A lot of people thought Colorado was going to take a step back and suck this year. Obviously, they didn't. Two of the top 3 picks in the NFL draft, including the Heisman winner, are going to be from Colorado, which is crazy because Colorado would have been an F 2 years ago. A flat-ass F. They are not an F anymore, but look, yeah, they won 9 games this year. Great. They won 5 games last year, and they won 1 game the year before that. Yes, they have Dion. I'm going to give them a bump for that. The transfer thing is madness, but it seems to be working fairly well for them. Yeah, notes on Colorado. Yeah, look. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to put Colorado, even though Colorado is different in so many ways, they have a lot of cachet now, then they're different from a lot of these sort of high C-level Big 12 teams. But I'm still going to put them, in the high C. I'm going to put them around there. They have a potential to move up. If Colorado comes out next year, goes to the Big 12 title game, wins the Big 12, goes to the playoff, but they're losing their best playmakers, and they're going to replace them with transfers. We'll see how that goes. I think Colorado has still got to prove it to me. I'm probably putting Colorado higher than I should based on just their play on the field, but they have this cachet now that's raised their profile a lot, and so I think high C is an appropriate place for them, somewhere around like where SMU is. You're going to have to show me again next year, Colorado, and the year after that this is a consistent thing, that Dion's not going to bolt for a different job, that you're not going to be like Florida State, right, who was really good in 23 and was god-awful in 24. Is that what's going to happen to Colorado next year? Is Colorado of 2025 going to be Florida State of 2024? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. We'll see. I'm going to put them in high C for now. Really, they could go either direction next year. Next one is BYU. BYU is Big 12 now, made that move a little bit more successful. BYU was an independent for a while and played almost kind of a power conference level schedule for most of their time as an independent, right? They were scheduling a lot of SEC and Big 12 and Pac-12 at the time teams, and so I don't think the transition was as difficult for BYU. Also, they have a lot of money. I don't know if you saw, they signed the #1 basketball recruit in the country, a kid that I met here. He came to Asia, to my city, and I got to meet him and interview him. And then he went back to the States and committed to BYU, which is crazy. Huge NIL deal. Anyway, that's not the point. BYU's got NIL money. They care about football. They have a rabid fan base. They're all wired on apple juice or whatever it is that they drink there. In any case, I think that they weren't supposed to be very good this year, and they were quite good. They did falter a little bit at the end of the year, but I think BYU, to me, is a pretty good program. But do I put BYU up here? Maybe. They're definitely not as consistent winners as these programs. I need to see it for longer. Do I put them here? Maybe. I'm actually going to put them down a little bit. I'm going to put them here. I want to see what they do next year. I think with BYU, I think that their coach is a pretty good coach, Sataki. I think that they get some pretty good players. I don't know. Maybe this is too low for BYU, but I'm going to put them right around where Colorado West. I think that even if it's for different reasons, a lot of these Big 12 programs I'm putting around the high C area. I think even though I'm ranking them there, many of them for different reasons, I think that my conclusion for a lot of these teams is pretty similar. Baylor, same thing. I'm going to put Baylor in that same area, right? Baylor was a really bad program. Would have been an F when I was a kid, or at least a D. Better now. We've seen them win. We've seen them win the Big 12 a couple of times. They got a nice stadium. They got some money, but they don't have a great tradition. The basketball is really good right now, but I don't know. Where do we put Baylor? I think Baylor's pretty clearly in this same sort of area. Let's put. I like them a little bit, maybe here, maybe a little bit better than. I don't know. We're splitting hairs at this point. Baylor's just a middle of the road Big 12 team that's going to be sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit. So it's quoting an Italian soccer player, whatever. If you know, you know. If you don't, fine. Yeah. So that's where I'm going to put Baylor. Okay, now here's a more interesting one. Arizona State. Obviously, Arizona State was supposed to be bad this year, and they were not. Whether or not they should have gotten a playoff bye is a matter for different discussion. I tend to think probably not. They should probably be the 11 seed in the playoff instead of the 4 seed. But whatever. They're in, and their running back's good, and they're pretty good, right? Need to see it more consistently. They were really bad a couple of years ago. The Herm Edwards era there was awful, and that's why they have Dillingham. Good coach. I think he's going to succeed. But I think I would have put Arizona State probably in the mid-C prior to this year. I'm going to put them up in the high C, give them an up arrow next to them in terms of their trend. I think they are trending up, but I need to see more from Arizona State. I'm just going to put them in there. Maybe I like them a little bit better than West Virginia or BYU. Maybe I don't know. I'm just going to put them in there. There's a bunch of Big 12 teams in high C, and I think that's where they should be. Arizona State, again, of course, if Arizona State wins after the first round bye, they'll get the Clemson-Texas winner. If they can win that game and get to the semifinal, great. Arizona State can be moving up. I can see Arizona State making a jump up to be in the near future, but I just need to see it again. They don't have that cachet of being like consistent winners because they're not consistent winners, at least not yet. The last Big 12 team is Arizona. They are not consistent winners. Arizona football is generally pretty bad. They're obviously a basketball school. Their football team is generally pretty bad. They're a place for a lot of retread coaching hires. Rich Rodriguez went there after he was fired. Kevin Sumlin went there after he was fired. Neither one. Rich Rod had a better tenure there than Sumlin did, but obviously their coach now is up and coming. As soon as the Washington job comes open, he jumps there. And it's just like, and then they were really bad this year. Arizona football doesn't carry a lot of cachet. They're not going to get a ton of great recruits. I just see them as a pretty weak program in the vein of a lot of the, like Arizona would fit in the ACC if it wasn't for the I don't think Arizona is going to be a team that wins as consistently as these Big 12 programs we see here on this level. I think they're more down in this level. What are my notes? Yeah. Here for Arizona. Arizona football, inspiring. Does it make you want to? It doesn't. Have you ever seen Arizona football be good? Like good? No. And I don't think that's going to change. So I'm going to put Arizona right there. I think that they are not as good as their in-state rival over time, and generally speaking. I think Arizona State's a better football program than Arizona. I'm going to put Arizona a tier below Arizona State. Next one. We are done with the Big 12. So now we move on to ranking the independent, and the two sort of left out in the cold teams. We're going to do them now, and then we'll finish with the SEC. We'll start with Notre Dame. Okay, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a good program. I know a lot of people like to shit on Notre Dame. They are very self-important. It's annoying to me and everyone. But they are a good program. They're better than they were in the 2000s or so when they were really struggling. They have improved. They are good. Brian Kelly did bring them up to a place they weren't before. Marcus Freeman has had some concerning losses. Obviously Northern Illinois this year, going back to like Marshall and Stanford. They've had some really bad losses, but Notre Dame is a team that generally is very tough up front. They can run the football and they grind their physically inferior opponents into a paste, usually. That's why, both Navy and Army were ranked and undefeated when they played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame beat the absolute piss out of both of them, and it didn't surprise me at all. That's the kind of team Notre Dame is. Notre Dame is good. Is Notre Dame going to win a national championship? No, I don't think so at all. Are they going to beat Georgia if they play them? No, I don't think so at all. But man, they're good, and they're a consistently good program. They have obviously great cachet. They have a ton of money. They're going to recruit well. They have, they're well positioned, even whether they stay an independent or whether they join a conference. Yeah, so I think Notre Dame is pretty clearly in a better place than like Notre Dame has elevated themselves above the Miamis and Florida States and USCs. They're better than those teams right now. They're better at places of program. I think that they're clearly an A tier. They are a top 10 program in the country. They have had better than, I'm going to put them here. Obviously, Michigan's national championship last year leaves them ahead of Notre Dame. But I do think Notre Dame has been a bigger winner than Penn State, generally speaking. We've seen Notre Dame in the playoff a couple of times. I think Notre Dame is a bit higher on the cachet scale than Penn State. So I'm going to put Notre Dame just ahead of Penn State in A tier as a top 10 program in the country. Now we've got our brothers at Washington State and Oregon State. Sad situation with what happened to them. The greed, the SEC and the Big Ten and the TV executives have screwed these programs. I fear that they won't be the last programs to be screwed in this manner. I think if the ACC, which looks like it's the conference that's on the least stable of footing right now, if it falls apart and the ACC teams end up scattering to other conferences, I think you've got schools like potentially a Boston College, a Wake Forest. I can't imagine Georgia Tech or what, but maybe, or Pitt or some other teams like that getting left out in the cold, which would be super unfortunate. Anyways, we'll talk about Washington State and Oregon State right now. Washington State, these teams are going to get a huge debuff here because they're just in bad situations. The Washington State's been pretty good, actually, over the last few years. They've won a lot of games. They won a bunch of games this year, but they're essentially in the Mountain West now. And that's the schedule they play, and it's not exciting. When they were playing USC and Oregon and things like that was exciting. And it was great for their fan. Now no one's going to get excited for Washington State, San Jose State, man. Washington State, Nevada. Like, no one gives a shit, and it sucks. And it's going to cost them a ton of money, and the recruiting will go down, and they will sort of become just a group of five kind of program, which sucks because I know some Washington State fans. I used to work with a bunch of Washington State grads. I won't get into it, but they're cool. But I don't think they're D. They win. But I don't think you can put them on even, I think they're like low C. I would put them in high C. I think, if the Pac-12 was still around, I'd probably put Washington State somewhere around here, right? But I can't do that now. In fact, I've got to put them like all the way down. I don't even think they're as well positioned as Cal. And I don't think Cal's in a good spot at all. And I think Washington State's position is worse. They're not a program with a huge tradition. They have won before, and they've had some good quarterbacks, but yeah, I got to give Washington State a big downgrade for the unfortunate situation they find themselves in. Same for Oregon State. And I think Oregon State's even in a worse place than Washington State. Even though Oregon State is your Pac-12 champion, as they won the only game between the two Pac-12 teams this year. But yeah, Oregon State. But they were not good this year, and they will not get better. And it's a really bad situation for Oregon State. I'm going to put Oregon State in the D tier. I'm going to put them ahead of these other schools because I think that they've been more consistent winners over the last few years, but it's just really rough. We've seen low lows for Oregon State as a program. The highs have not been amazing. They're not horrible right now, but I wouldn't want to be an Oregon State fan right now. They're really in an unfortunate spot. So we're going to put Oregon State right there at the top, above the teams that are truly fighting insane uphill battles at places like Northwestern and Stanford and Purdue, but Oregon State's, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. We're going to put them in D. And now, okay, so now we've made it to the SEC.